standard for the Goblins deck. I mean, not so much Gutter Snipe, it really depends on how much burn we're playing in that deck, although we are playing some. But Goblin Instigator gets a definite slot in every standard Goblin deck while it's in the form. For a common, this is nearly guaranteed ramp that gets you whatever land, you know? It doesn't just say basic land. That's pretty good. Plus, it puts a body on the field to chunk. It looks incredible. It's a source of direct damage when you play it, so it's even good. When you top, Guild Mare looks awesome. The green one, the Hexproof Force, that looks fine too. It's just about all of these common in the entire set is Militia Bugler. This looks like it's going to do a few things in standard and maybe even modern. Just the ability to get you that kind of extra value is millionth time. Yes, it does host Tron. You should know that by now. Mistcaller, narrow answer card that answers just a few things that are important enough, but does so for 1 mana with safekeeping. It's decent against Storm in Modern, obviously, and just tokens decks in general, like World, Scapeshift, and Omniscience in this set. This list would not be complete without at least pointing out these cards are in the set. Obviously, these cards constitute well over $100 in value when you add them all up. You know, Crucible was like $65, Scapeshift was like $55, Omniscience was like $30, so there's a lot of value printed up in just these 3 cards. Shock the world and change things too much, it's just going to be easier to get the cards. This is a tribal planeswalker, so in a vacuum it doesn't look super good. It's got to have help from zombies, but obviously it might be able to bring zombies back from the dead. Last rotation. It's entirely possible, and I want to jam a bunch of zombies together and see if we can make Liliana work too. Similarly, it's a little bit more points because it looks at least somewhat decent outside of just a Dragon's deck. 3 mana Raven is actually pretty impressive, and I like the +1. Rummaging is just the axe, you know, it's going to do some damage to set things up right. And then, even if they can kill it once it loses its hexproof, you just reanimate it with a Lumen Standard if you want to play either of these tribal decks. Now, the Goblin Lord is 4 mana, and it's way more expensive than any of us wanted it to be, but it's still going to see play in the upcoming Standard. It doesn't look super good as a 1 toughness Lord, but it's still going to see some play, right? I mean, it's a 2 mana. The Knight deck didn't necessarily need this, but it's definitely going to take it. Follows up a history of Benelia like super well, and the ability to throw 5 mana into it and just give every one of your creatures double strike is obviously, while we have Oketra's Monument in the format, this is effectively going to be our bygone Bishop. That's one of the reasons that that deck is just not as good as it used to be. This is probably the best card we got to see printed for the Goblin deck out of the entirety of Core Set 2019. Sacrificing a creature to, quote, draw a card is a relatively steep cost. Don't get an insane control finisher. Finishes the game in 3 bites. Has flash. Has flying. Some form of evasion. Has a form of hexproof you can give to it. That's unbelievable. And, by the way, extra pro points if you can deal the last point of damage with an unblockable Q. Crazy over this card. I'm not saying it deserves to be $15 or anything, just because it may end up having the most real effect on a format. So go into the Banned Spirits deck almost certainly, and it does some really important things there. Play it on extremely important in that deck. So this deck's playing Mountains, a real tool against control decks. And I've seen a lot of people say, like, oh, they just commit to memory your Banefire. Yeah, and then they draw it again in a couple of turns. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this is already popular red deck. I think this is pretty sweet in, like, the blue-red Mirari deck, you know. That's going to be fun in Standard. There's a lot of reasons, Catman. It's a Johnny right here. And honestly, if there's anything that keeps Valiant Knight from seeing play as a 4-drop in the Knight deck, it's probably this. This looks really, really good in Black-White Knights, where it can bring back either Knight of Grace or Knight of Malice or any number of other things. You know, Dauntless Bodyguard after it's sacrificed to protect something. Just bring your bodyguard back. Things like Mox Amber. This is yet another thing to enable Mox Amber if you felt like we didn't already have enough pieces, which I guess a lot of people feel like other artifacts in this format, and there are a metric ton of good artifacts people are playing. And getting extra value in the form of flying creatures seems in play, but this in Standard, this outlives a ton of a very important removal. And again, it doesn't have to fill your board with flying copies. It can just give you 2 or 3, and that's good enough. This is seriously, to my mind, one of the best cards in the entire set. I've heard plenty of people say this is going to be good in cost. That's really decent to me. Crew's Heart of Kieran, by the way, early in the game, it's one of the reasons 2 mana 3 aggressively costs it in the first place. You don't even have to get any extra value out of it for it to be a valuable card. But the moment you get any extra value out of it, it's going to, once the format rotates, and may even be in the same decks as Scrappy to help crew up a Heart of Kieran. So I Just love old how when it comes to Marshall, even just outside of a zombie deck. This just looks. I don't think we'll see this card right away. Might have to wait on Fumigate to rotate, but there's plenty of players talking about a 2-1 split with Fumigate because in the upcoming format, there are obviously going to be some artifact decks. Not just because of Psy and a couple of other cards that work with artifacts, but my number one card on this list is going to make artifact decks super playable for at least the next couple of months. So you might want the flexibility. Enchantments in this format, like Seal Away, Cast Out, Ixalan's Binding, History of Benalia, sometimes Antiquities War. Like, there's a ton of enchantments that people are playing right now. So some decks, combo decks, artifact-based decks, that this card would sometimes be dead against because those decks just don't play a whole bunch of creatures. But your 5-mana sweeper can actually be online against decks that would normally be dead against. I think that's a huge bonus. Now, my number 5 is a card that I'm a little surprised. Runic Armasaur. The card is just unbelievable in multiple formats. Against Standard, this really helps out against Walking Ballista. It's going to be almost impossible for them to ping a Runic Armasaur to death. If they want to ping anything else with Walking Ballista, it's going to cost them a card per activation, which is unbelievable. That's pretty good. A 2/5 is decent for 3 mana by itself. That's not a bad body. It blocks all day against aggro decks, Doesn't die to most of their stuff. Doesn't die to just about any red removal, so it's just decent against it. If they want to activate their Hazoret for that little bit of reach, well, we get to draw a card. They want to, get rid of their Bomat Courier and draw, well, we get to draw too. If they want to, sacrifice a Fanatical Firebrand if they're playing that card, well, we get to draw a card for that. So there's just so many things this hoses. In Standard alone, not to mention Modern, where if they want to crack a fetch, you draw a card, and that's good enough by itself. But we made it to number 4, again, Cleric. This is just a home run in terms of playability, and it's going to see play in multiple formats. This is yet another card that seems really good in the Banned Spirits deck, and is at least going to be in the 75. It might go in the sideboard, where it's better than Rest in Peace. It's a body, fits with your tribal theme, love everything about it in that deck, but it may also be playable in Standard. Blue-White Godfarer's Gift might want this for the mirror match. That doesn't seem bad. You can wipe their graveyard, and then bring this back as a 4/4 flyer. That's okay. But it also plays pretty well against Godfarer's Gift decks, and the Scarab God, and Liliana, and all manner of graveyard shenanigans like Scrappy. So, this Angel, kids, it's finally here, and yes, I think this card is the real deal. That's why it's all the way up my list here. I think this card is just good for Standard, period. It's got decent stats, obviously. A 3-mana 3/3 flyer is nothing to sneeze at. I don't know why people are saying that's bad. That's good. You're forcing your opponent to have the Abrade of the Lightning Strike or the Cruel Heart of Kirin to knock this out of the sky. The card is great in that respect. Just the stats are right for Standard, even if there was no other text. There is other text. So it makes the card snowball amazingly in the late game if they can't kill it. By the time you can pump the mana into it, they're going to have a real problem on their hands, and it's a fine top deck for that reason too. You get this later on in the game, turn 9 into it, and making Angels. That's one of the things I really like about this card is that it's self-sufficient. People are talking about building whole decks around it, and yeah, you want to live the dream and go like turn 2 Metallic Mimic, turn 3 Resplendent Angel, turn 4 Shalai, turn 5 Luna, everyone to it, and it will create Angels if it does combat damage that turn. Really crazy. And even if you only ever create 1 Angel while this is on board, it got you a dangerous amount of value. So I just think they obviously pushed this card as hard as they could for Standard play, and it's gonna see some. But we made it to number 2 eventually. Here's Nikki B. Nicol Bolas is easily my number 2, if not my number 1, and this is another one of those cards that people are like, I don't know. Focus on the first half. It's a 4-mana 4/4 flyer, which are almost acceptable stats in Standard, but the end of the battlefield trigger is what I'm really digging on this card. It's basically a 2-for-1. I mean, it's not Ravenous Chupacabra, obviously, but you're still getting a creature on board and forcing this effectively a 2-for-1 in creature form, which is more than good enough. But if you ever get it flipped, it's obviously right after this is game-breaking and plays well with each other. You can kill a Planeswalker with one of his abilities and then resurrect that Planeswalker with another one of his abilities. Not to mention his ultimate is literally you win the game. The card is just unbelievable even if you never flip it, and when you do flip it, it's out of this freaking world. It's gonna see some Standard play. It might even resurrect a Grimwan, and you knew it had to go for the next few months before fall rotation hits, and we still have Kaladesh and Aether Revolt in the format. This is just an absolutely bonkers card. zero ability. It's going to be so easy to draw 2 cards off of this that it's dumb. And you don't even have to sacrifice any loyalty to draw 2 cards off of it. That's just crazy. You know, everyone's talked about you follow up Karn with this, and it's just unbelievable. Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good enough to me. It's a blue-based artifact, probably blue-black artifact tag. Looks to be poised really, really well in the upcoming format, just because Karn into Tezzeret looks ridiculous. And the zero ability, even though it's getting all the attention right now, is not the only good ability on this Planeswalker. Obviously, you know, the first ability is insane too. That's also a pretty desirable thing to be able to do. Plus, the ultimate is nuts if you can get to it. It doesn't necessarily say you win the game, but if you get a couple of turns with it, tutoring up anything you want and playing it for free is freaking stupid. So,
Okay, guys, I'm going to be opening up Core Set 2019. That's the reason to go over what Devs just said. Hey, that's just to let you know why Core 2019 is so good. And without further ado, please go look at Dev's deck text whenever you can. It's very good. I'm gonna start opening these boxes in a little bit. Let's start with the first one, and then work my way on down to the last one. So this will be part 1 since it's mostly Dev's video. I will leave it at that.